In the 90s and early 2000s, Turner Broadcast Network, which is now TNT, had really limited involvement in the games industry, really only through licensing and a bit of publishing. But in the mid-2000s, they took what was a massive swing at the time and launched a service called GameTap. GameTap was a client with hundreds, and even at one point over 1,000 games that rotated in and out of the library, all for a small monthly fee. Sound familiar? The service gave you access to new games as well as classic games depending on which subscription tier you bought. Sound familiar? And it even had exclusive games that you could only get with this service.
I wonder what comparisons this guy's trying to make over here.
Among those exclusive deals was the episodic series Grimm by American McGee, which was pretty ambitious but was hit with mixed reception, and Sam & Max Season 1, the first major project from then unknown studio Telltale Games. The episodic structure of GameTap Originals was obviously designed with long-term subscriptions in mind, and it was actually a pretty novel idea at the time, because even though the structure wasn't entirely new, and even the same year as Sam & Max we got Half-Life 2 Episode 1, Telltale was really the pioneer of these self-contained, serialized episodes that were laid out similarly to a TV show, a formula that they later garnered critical acclaim for with The Walking Dead, and one that inspired the likes of Life is Strange and the Dark Pictures anthology. So even past its influence on game subscription models, GameTap holds an interesting place in history when it comes to its influence on the basic format of certain games. It also wasn't just a game service. It featured TBS shows and even GameTap exclusive TV content like this Tomb Raider series. It was a generally well-liked, and at least at a certain point, seemingly successful service, but with complaints of a clunky interface, the rise of PC storefronts, and the high cost of operating this service considering the licensing deals involved for a company with no prior leverage in the game space, GameTap struggled, changed hands, and slowly died out until its official closure in 2015, at which point it had been practically forgotten. Ironically, 2015 was around the time the modern game subscription race kicked into high gear, with EA launching their service that year and Game Pass releasing just 2 years later. But instead of talking about that, I actually want to go backwards a little. Because like I said, GameTap came out in the mid-2000s, 2005 to be exact, 20 whole years ago, and yet it somehow wasn't the first attempt at creating a game subscription service despite how new that phenomenon seems. The first attempt was actually another 24 years earlier in 1981 with PlayCable.
When PlayCable comes to your house, cable comes alive. It's the world's most sophisticated computer game library at your fingertips 24 hours a day.
PlayCable was a game distribution service tied to the Intellivision by Mattel. At a time when game cartridges were incredibly expensive, when you needed to pay around $150 adjusted for inflation to play something like this, PlayCable's goal was to give consumers the option to play games digitally. In 1980, before the internet was even publicly available. That is a ballsy move. The way the PlayCable worked also was kinda genius. Essentially, certain cable TV providers agreed to broadcast a special channel for the Intellivision, and you could purchase a PlayCable adapter that connected the cable box to the Intellivision's cartridge slot, which allowed it to receive game data via cable TV signals. It really was a feat of engineering, but of course, in order for this to work, you needed to pay for the Intellivision console, the cable, and the monthly subscription fee, which racked up a pretty penny all in all. But still, the PlayCable was reportedly somewhat successful in its initial years. At least, successful in the market it was able to target. With how innovative this tech was, cable companies were really struggling to keep up with the demanding requirements to broadcast the channel, and most of them decided to just not play ball at all, which meant PlayCable was only available in 13 cities at launch. The other issue was that the games weren't downloaded to permanent storage, they were stored in RAM, which meant you couldn't actually permanently save your games, and games later in the Intellivision lifecycle may not have even fit on the 4 kilobytes available. You couple that with the video game crash of 1983, and the PlayCable was just unsustainable, and only existed for about 4 years before being discontinued. But there were plenty of other attempts at a game subscription service between PlayCable and GameTap. GameLine was the Atari competitor to PlayCable that came out a few years later in 1983. This one actually used a phone line to let you download games to your console. You would buy a modem, connect it to your Atari, and straight up call a landline and say, hey, can I download a game, please? The number of games available was a lot bigger than play cables, and the Atari 2600 was also a significantly more popular system than the Intellivision, but the pricing here was even stupider. Instead of a monthly subscription, for each download you had to pay $1. And to be clear, I don't mean a permanent download where you get the whole game forever for $1. That would be great, actually. No, one download would only cover 5 to 10 plays of a game, similar to a play for an arcade machine. It would also run out if you turned your console off or if a week passed, after which you had to pay the download fee again. And since the modem could only hold one game at a time, the service was incredibly unpopular and was discontinued within a year. Despite that, though, a lot of the people behind it had big plans on how to expand this idea further, and they went on to start a company that incorporated a lot of that into what would eventually become AOL, which was a pioneering service in the early internet era. Even 10 years after GameLine shut down, game services were still struggling despite becoming a slightly bigger part of the zeitgeist with Sega Channel in 1994. The model here was similar to Play Cable before it, connecting the Sega Genesis to your cable box with a wire and letting you download games at a monthly fee. Only this time more providers supported the service, a lot more games were available per month, and the price was much more palatable. It even came with game demos, cheat codes, and exclusives like this Mega Man game that never got a North American physical release. Sega Channel definitely gets a lot more credit for its innovations than Play Cable and GameLine did because of its broader reach and Sega's dominance at the time, but it still had the issue of game downloads existing only in temporary storage, and also launched at just a terrible time, right before the Sega Saturn came out and quickly took the limelight off the Genesis. Timing is usually credited as the biggest reason for Sega Channel's ultimate failure, and if it had launched earlier, there's no telling how much this could have shaped the next 20 years of game distribution. As it stands, those 20 years were plenty busy and plenty messy, with a lot of online services popping up off the back of dial-up internet, stuff like the Sierra Network, mplayer.com, and MSN Gaming holding the market for a time, some even still being available today to some capacity. But in my opinion, the two most defining early moments of game subscriptions are Xbox Live in 2002 and PlayStation Plus in 2010, services that have really stood the test of time and have influenced and altered each other as the years have gone on. They helped lay the groundwork for just about every subscription service that's come out since, and have remained the two most notable services in the game space, although one of them goes by a different name now. Still, the influence of some of these older models is undeniable, and while the 1980s clearly didn't have the technological stability and infrastructure to support these ideas, some 40-odd years later, we're finally seeing the future that was envisioned by Play Cable and GameLine. If you're interested in watching a much longer video about the current subscription landscape and the effect it's going to have on the short and long-term future of the games industry, you can watch that over on my main channel. It's going to be linked right over here. Subscribe, join the Discord, and I'll see y'all next time. Bye.